Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. Right, so now that we have released my class ranking video where I ranked each class according to their relative strength to each other, then I released top 10 videos of each class ranking the best champions in their respective classes. Now though, it's time to squish all of those lists together and make a top 15 champions in Marvel Contest Champions in June of 2021 video. Now, obviously, standard mandatory disclaimers because it never quite reaches the point. These lists are based on my opinions in a mix with current metagame and current trends in the game overall. So that is also how champions vary from spot to spot every half year once I do release these lists. By no means think these lists as a Bible. You should look at these lists as approximation of current game status and my view on the champions, and that is all there is to it. Do not use these videos as a deciding factor which champion to rank, which champion not to rank. Always try to rank your champions target and goal oriented. Don't rank up any champion just because he's ranked highly in some random YouTube video. Rank up a champion that is going to help to get where you're going in Marvel Contest of Champions. If you need help with tech variant, check out your tech class and rank up a good tech champion. If you need help with extra large variant, rank up something for that, so on and so forth. Do not focus on these rankings when it comes to deciding champion rank ups yourself. At best, if something is ranked super highly here, try to pay those champions a bit of attention and perhaps you can see what I see in those champions. But that is all there is to that. Now, the second disclaimer. All of these rankings are extremely tight, perhaps with the exception of top 5, which I feel is a bit higher up and a bit further apart. That being in mind, kept in mind, remember that spot number 15 might as well very easily could be interchanged with spot number 9, for example. There really is not a huge margin in the quality of these champions, because that is exactly the point of this video. Every single champion mentioned in this video is amazing, is awesome, is more than likely going to be somebody's favorite, is more than likely going to be a champion that somebody would call the best champion for them. And that is perfectly fine. The fact that these champions are on this list is already proof enough of my acknowledgement that I value, like, and love and use these champions. As an added side note, I do have 13 out of 15 champions here as rank 3 6-stars, and I do plan to take the missing 2 up eventually as well, once I'm able to. So I do have a fair amount of playtime with each and every single champion mentioned on this list. And the very final thing, these will not be as detailed breakdowns as I did in class ranking videos, because every single champion mentioned in this video I have already discussed in their respective class video. So I'm going to make it very hard for you to throw a lot of shade in comment section, because I'm not going to say a single bad thing about any of these champions. In fact, I'm just going to highlight the aspects where they really do excel in, and I'm going to not dive into as much detail in attempt not to make this video 40 minutes long like I did with a mutant class breakdown. So we're going to start with a mutant, quite appropriately, and there's going to be plenty of mutants this time. This time there is more mutants than anything else, I think, in this list. That being said, let's go with Omega Red. And Omega Red is de facto the best mutant for Alliance War. He's definitely the most used one. I believe that in every single battle group in Tier 1 War, there is at least one decent, good, or adept Omega Red player, and that is for a very good reason. His ability to bypass passive damage back with his tentacle kit, and also his ability to prevent opponent from shrugging off his debuffs, in combination with his massive damage output at start of the fight, if you are able to place a lot of spores on the opponent, is extremely invaluable. And that is, I think, the highlight where Omega Red excels. Haven't seen him shine too brightly in any of the other recent contents. He's not quite Everest type of champion, but for short, fast, quick, bursty fights, he's definitely one of your best options, which makes him extremely valuable with the main focus of Alliance War. Obviously, he is Sig 200 champion, and he does get a significant damage boost at start of the fight if you are running double edge mastery, so those are points to keep in mind. In general, Omega Red provides you with the ability to heal from bleed debuffs. Level 3 can provide a very hefty healing as well. Level 1, I personally am not the biggest fan of level 1 because if you use Omega Red, then recoil is present and you hardly get to net any heal. Level 2 obviously activates the death field. And in general, Omega Red's value vastly differs on how effectively players are able to use him. He's one of those champions with slightly different playstyle, and you can often gain a lot and accomplish a lot more just by slowing it down, for example. There are a lot of nuance to Omega Red, and if you have found Omega Red underwhelming, then I definitely suggest checking out, Lizer's war videos, for example. Lizer is a very, very good Omega Red player, and there's, I believe, quite a lot of footage on YouTube. I actually at some point did a Labyrinth run with Omega Red as well. Even though that wasn't the best showcase of Omega Red, I just found it important to point out that he's able of doing long fights as well. Just maybe not necessarily his forte. Right, moving on to spot number 14, and spot number 14 is going to go to Molgard, his debut on this list, and that is just a proof of how impressed I am with the character now. I took him to rank 3 a while ago, and ever since that happened, I can't stop using him. He's one of the niftiest, fastest questing champions in many different circumstances, because in order to finish out the fight, only thing you have to do is parry heavy, take a hit on a block, land 2 combos, the fight is done. On top of that, he is currently one of the upper tier Alliance quest and Alliance war options. He is a perfect MODOK counter in several different mini boss and boss situations, and not just that, he is also a lane clearing machine. I believe Karate Mike has quite a lot of Moleman footage with him destroying pretty much all of the villain variant and also soloing several Abyss of Legends fights. So he definitely is viable for short and long fights. On top of that, the utility pieces that are there are extremely easily to be accessed, and that is the best thing about him. The fact that you just randomly start the fight with true accuracy active. The fact that all of those crits and guaranteed bleeds are there. The fact that you are guaranteed to shrug off debuff if you're not in your frenzy mode. And on top of all of it, obviously, he doesn't even need to be awakened to be absolutely insane and amazing. And it will be interesting to see if Moleman actually can climb up any higher than that. I think he might be reaching to his peak potential right now in game, but I definitely do hope to see plenty more content where Moleman absolutely tears through stuff. And spot number 13, staying on skill class, is going to be Aegon. Now, Aegon always gets quite a controversial attitude from community. There are people who love and live by Aegon and his value, and there are people who just don't like the character. And I can understand that. He's a ramp-up champion, and ramp-up champions are definitely not everybody's cup of tea. But I think what people are overestimating is how hard it is to ramp Aegon up. It's actually not that hard at all, and when any other ramp-up champions get brought in the conversation, my first defense of Aegon is, well, first of all, that is his biggest weakness, the fact that he has to have his ramp up. But my first defense of Aegon always is, but you don't really have to ramp up. Ramp up is something that happens with, Morningstar. You have to get to level 3 and capture the soul if you want that fight to matter. With Aegon, you have to hit the opponent, not get hit, and not even think about ramp up. You just need to think about fighting, which you would do with any other champion. And the ramp up is something that happens in the background. And that is one of the bigger differences why Aegon is still so good for even shorter content. Aegon was one of the Act 6 MVPs because of how brutal and punishing that piece of content is. Aegon, even though some people struggle with initial fights ramping him up, is one of the better options and strategies for a ton of fights in Grandmaster's Gauntlet, for example. And I believe to this day there hasn't been a single huge piece of content where Aegon is bad at. And that ultimately comes down to it. Aegon might not be a champion that you bring in day to day when you do cab questing, even though many people have started using him for the latest skill cab node. But he definitely is a champion that you always want to have, and he's a champion where you're gonna go to when push comes to shove, when hard piece of content comes out, when Grandmaster's Gauntlet Chapter 2 is gonna come out. Look in the mirror and tell me that Aegon will not be one of the first champions you can consider bringing in for Grandmaster's Gauntlet Chapter 2 without reading every single fight. If you would have to put your team with eyes closed, you're gonna know it's gonna be hard piece of content, you're gonna know opponents are gonna be fairly hefty, like probably Aegon. That's how it goes in this game. And why it is so? Because his kit is insanely versatile. Even if you do not unlock the unblockable and unstoppable stuff, so long as you get to about 150, 300 hits on the combo meter, you roll in. Every hit pretty much crits. You crit through block, you do a ton of damage. You shut down opponents away completely. You have access to plenty of buffs, thus obviously bypassing plenty of these buffed up nodes and stuff like that. Don't ever have to throw a special attack if you don't want to. If you can't throw special attacks, you can stun opponents with level 3 forever, inflict bleed, or just carry on throwing level 1 ramp up. You can play Aegon with or without Liquid Courage and Double Edge. Your choice. It's just so versatile, and it's impossible to ignore. Therefore, Aegon stands very proudly at top of in the top 15 champion list. Now, spot number 12 is going to go to a slightly different champion. Slightly newer champion, but a champion that is slowly but surely making people believe. And every single passing day, we see some new, fun, interesting, crazy Professor X video. And Professor X is turning people into believers day by day. Once again, pretty much every single piece of content that has come out since this champion has been in the game, and also the harder piece of content that had been released over recent years. Professor X answers to a lot, if not most of it. Now, the bigger downside, which I'm not going to focus on, definitely is the fact that Professor X does require, again, a bit longer fights to excel. However, he can ramp himself off quite quickly, and in combination with, for instance, Mutant Power Boost, he can totally annihilate dozens of fights. He shuts down opponents' evades and miss effects without even trying. And then there's obviously his synergy factor. Addition of Professor X has been one of the more influential things that happened in Malcolms of Champions in 2020, and he carries out to prove it. He can make any mutant. Mutant is the only class where you can turn any champion into Liquid Courage Double Edge friendly champion. On top of all of that, you can significantly enhance all of your X-Men, all of your mutant champions, and he himself is an absolute stud. Once again, I believe results speak for themselves. We see Professor X definitely putting in work in Alliance War, which is extremely, extremely competitive environment, as competitive as this game can get. You can see Professor X putting in tons of work in Grandmaster's Gauntlet. You can see Professor X being used in 7.2 and 7.1, and people who are just now exploring Act 6 are also managing to get a lot done with Professor X. So that is where we stand. Let's move up to Colossus. Now, Colossus, again, if it just would be me, my own personal opinion, I probably would rank him several spots higher. But all things considered, Colossus is immunity and damage machine. One of the bigger things that people like to try and hold up against Colossus is the fact that he depends on Omega Red synergy, which first and foremost is the only synergy that heavily enhances his damage output. The rest of the ones are neat, nice, not needed. Omega Red synergy makes his damage output from good to insanely great. And that is Omega Red's answer to a ton of problems. Omega Red is one of my more used champions in the game, despite the fact that I have heavily stacked mutant roster. So we can filter out by mutants. You can see that I do have more than my fair share of mutant rank 2s, rank 3s. So Magneto is rank 3, Apocalypse, Namor, Professor X, Archangel, Omega Red, and Domino Summer. And Colossus easily holds his own and often does better than any other champions for a lot of different scenarios. There is simplicity to his playstyle, but there's also a lot of safety, a lot of versatility, plenty of immunities, and insane tankiness. Therefore, he's also very, error friendly, so to speak. Whoopsie moments does not matter with Colossus, nowhere near as much as they do with, let's say, Professor X, is what I'm trying to say. But yes, in general, I still value Colossus extremely highly. He still is plowing through content like no tomorrow. And again, any more significant piece of content, you can definitely look at Colossus and be relatively confident that he can put in plenty of work. Let's move on to spot number 10. And spot number 10, this champion has fallen slightly down on my list, but that also happened in a class ranking video. And I explained exactly why. However, Captain America Infinity War, in my eyes, is like Captain Dependable. Whenever any problem presents itself, maybe Captain America Infinity War will not be the absolute top of the tier option, but he's there. He can put in work. And a good example for that was when I did my Horsemanless Abyss run. It was, in fact, mainly due to the fact that you parry heavy, therefore you do not have many hits on your combo meter. He was putting in very, very solid effort in every single fight. He was one of my MVPs for my Horsemanless Abyss run, because you could use him to reverse regen, and even in any standard average fight, just by playing parry heavy level 2, you do not consume your combo meter fast, and by extension of that, you end up dealing a ton of damage per revive. He is used in Alliance War and Alliance Quest, maybe not as much as he used to, but definitely still holds very significant relevance. He is one of the cornerstones of Science class, and as I said, I don't know a single person that does not like their Captain America Infinity War or regrets investing resource in him, and he is one of the champions I would like to dupe the most in Science class, so I can start ranking him up, investing, and having him available to me, because I do rely on him, and I do believe that he will be very useful for times to come in this game. Let's move on to spot number 9. Spot number 9, here we go, we need to jump back to Mutant class once again. That's kind of like a fairly overarching theme in this list, and that's Apocalypse. New Apocalypse now has broken in top 10 champion list in this game. And there are a ton of different factors for it, but again, in his case, I believe results speak for themselves. Apocalypse is capable champion in Abyss of Legends. I have personally done several Labyrinth of Legends runs with him. Apocalypse constantly gets used for Alliance War. He gets used for any harder content that comes out. He's one of the top options for plenty of fights in Grandmaster's Gauntlet. He is present in 7.1, 7.2. And that is only him as a champion. And then there comes obviously all the synergies that has completely shifted the way we look at Cable. Cable is an absolute machine of destruction. Probably my next rank 3 at this point. It's made Gambit insanely useful as well. Wolverine is completely different champion. Archangel turns into even bigger of a beast. And all of that is down to to Apocalypse. Now, I must say that I do believe that community, or at the very least parts of community, overrate the Horseman ability itself. I do think it's a neat, nifty thing, but 9 times out of 10 in questing situations, I prefer to keep 4 charge on Apocalypse than make somebody else Horseman of Apocalypse. But that could be a separate discussion. Anyways, Apocalypse, spot number 9. Now, spot number 8, a little bit of resurgence for me, for this champion specifically, and that is Corvus. In previous list at December 2020, I believe I ranked Corvus in number 13. But ever since then, absolutely unintentionally, I had actually started relying more and more on Corvus once again. Now, Corvus is the only champion that can claim to pretty much own a game mode at this point in the game. There was a Kabam statistic that got released by either one of the members in CCP, as in a quote from a developer, or one of the developers being on a live stream or a podcast. I don't exactly remember where did it come from, but it is said that Corvus is currently doing 70% of overall map 7 Alliance Quest fights. Any champion that does 70% of overall anything in this game deserves respect and deserves to be looked at. And obviously, it's not like Corvus is just Alliance Quest champion. I did end up using Corvus in Grandmaster's Gauntlet myself, and he did phenomenally well. I did end up using Corvus for some fights in 7.2, and you can definitely use Corvus in Act 6 and Act 7 as well. And that is kind of like the situation with Corvus, where he has to be max rank. You have to commit to him in plenty of situations with boosts and maybe cosmic power boost. But once you do, is one of the most satisfying and destructive experiences that you can have in this game. And that is without even mentioning his immortality mechanic, which ultimately works as a cheat death cheese, where you can survive any damage over time effect, any passive damage degen or burst of damage. And 1 HP Corvus is quite a scary phenomenon in this game. Something I, without a doubt, believe Kabam wishes they have never made, because it has saved so many people so much resources. And Corvus has that underestimated ability, once awakened, to be a substitute for pretty much anything. Might not have the smoothest or fastest time getting something down compared to like the best option. But yeah, for instance, you can just bring him in on any degen path. Why not? Just play with him on 1 HP. Be careful. Maybe you're gonna fall. Maybe you're gonna die. Give him a single revive. Don't bother with health potions. Carry on. That's the beauty of Corvus. How much he can do with very, very little. So that's why Corvus is back up to number 8. Number 7 is another champion that has definitely completely shaped the game and shaped the way we look at fights. Fights that used to be scary are not anymore. And by extension, Alliance War defense always keeps this champion in mind. And by extension, whenever you see a tricky boss fight, you double check your memory or the game searching for the tags. Because if it is metal, there's a good chance it's going to get destroyed by Magneto. Now again, Magneto might not be everybody's cup of tea, but nobody can deny that Magneto has had a very significant impact on this game. He is decently good champion. He would not make close to top 15 without his if there would be no metal champions in game, so to speak. He can do well against non-metal champions, without a doubt. He can still put up decent amount of bleeds, decent amount of promises, good amount of special damage, and all that other stuff. But that's not why he's up here. He's up here because when he does go up against metal champions, it's an absolute carnage. And there's not much else to say. Anytime, any game mode, any place where you see metal champions, you immediately think about Magneto. At least I do. Right, now let's move on to spot number 6, and spot number 6 is going to be Warlock. Now Warlock perhaps has slipped slightly, in my opinion, but in general he's still one of those Swiss Army knives, one of those champions I wish everybody would have had access to, one of those champions that kind of snuck upon us and manages just to do everything. I recently released a video about the most useful champions overall for all of the variants combined, and Warlock is up there because he's extra large, because he's tech, because he can be used in hero variant, and so on and so forth. He's one of the variant 1 MVPs as well, for example. I think it's fun. And yeah, that is Warlock. So obviously, one of the most used champions for Alliance War, his ability to shut down willpower healing and basically make sure opponents never get to drop a special attack. That has led to a very interesting phenomena where there are plenty of people specifically switching off willpower in order to avoid Warlock being able to use for those fights. So now every alliance kind of gets to play the game, scout which player has willpower on and which doesn't. At the very least, it happens in tier 1 wars. I have no doubt in tier 2 wars, everybody just keeps the willpower on. But that is something that is happening, which is very interesting impact he has had. Overall, he's a champion that's relatively unsuspecting, but extremely capable. Puts in work in every single game mode, gets used in Alliance Quest, massively in Alliance War, in a bunch of variants, and also in Grandmaster's Gauntlet to deal with several of the problem fights. His passive heal block is one of the most powerful healing mitigation abilities in the game. And this is where he lies. This is where I currently believe he finds himself in. I'm going to go with spot number 5, and spot number 5 we're going to jump back to Mutant class, and spot number 5 I'm going to give it to Archangel. Now, Archangel has always been relevant to the game and capable of dealing with a ton of problems, but the recent content releases have basically allowed and elevated this champion to even bigger heights. Now, since the release of Archangel as a 6-star, he has flown so high and so fast towards the top of the game. And as I said, this is where I feel the bigger divide has happened. I do believe that every single champion from spot number 2 to 5 can be relatively easily interchanged, but I do not believe that you can put up the same comment for spots number 5 and spots number 10, for instance, because I do feel there's a bigger power gap. That being said, Warlock destroys just everything, and Warlock only gets ever one piece of criticism. You can't use him in bleed immune matchups. It's like, okay, cool, so don't. There is not a single champion on this list or in game that you can use in every single match. No, there should be. What matters is what he does when he gets used, how well he does it, and how important it is to your game progression and your ability to clear content. And this is how important Archangel is. Every single piece of content where you can use Archangel, you will use Archangel because he is the best. A perfect example is today, this month, Blade boss in the Cavalier quest with life cycle and all that other stuff. There are a group of people who are super pissed and annoyed and struggling and complaining to Kabam how unfair and hard that fight is, which it is harder than it should have been the right to be. But at the same time, there is a group of people standing on the side looking at the other group with a little smirk on their face because they didn't even realize that fight was meant to be hard because they brought in Archangel. That is how big of a difference an Archangel can make in a casual monthly event quest. And now you can apply that same thinking, same logic to Grandmaster's Gauntlet. He's one of the best champions for a ton of fights in Grandmaster's Gauntlet and one of the bigger MVPs there. One of the best champions for any recent variants released wherever he can be brought in. He's one of the best options for 7.2 and 7.1. You guys see the trend there. If anything, I was thinking maybe of placing Archangel even higher. But here we are. But spot number 4 is currently going to go to Human Torch. I was really struggling, and honestly, I kind of look at Human Torch and Archangel very similarly. I would even give them split third, so to speak. I do think Archangel is as good as Human Torch is, and I do think Human Torch is as good as Archangel is. I do think they do very similar things slightly differently. The one reason why Human Torch, I suppose, out-edges Archangel slightly is the No Flame. Is the fact that Human Torch doesn't have that check if opponent is Incinerate immune. If opponent is Incinerate immune, you can still torch it. Obviously, Human Torch still, however, does have plenty of bad matchups, and that is the matchups where there are non-mystic, non-energy based attacks in the champion. And that is a situation where, just like you don't want to use Archangel against bleed immunes where you don't want to use Human Torch, you can put in work, and if that access to Incinerate is that important, sometimes you do. But in general, Human Torch is a champion where you use him in a good matchup and you just don't use him in a bad matchup. But his influence over time in game has only grown. He's one of the, if not the most important champion for 100% Abyss exploration now. If it would not be for how good Aegon is for Collector, I think Human Torch would be the most important piece of 100% Abyss. Human Torch is also one of the more used champions in Grandmaster's Gauntlet, even though I personally was not that big of a fan of Human Torch in Grandmaster's Gauntlet due to the fact that the biggest weakness Human Torch has is squishiness. It doesn't really take a hit on a block well, and that doesn't go too well with the way he builds smolders at times. But it is something we have to deal with, and nobody can be absolutely perfect. That being said, Human Torch is one of the most powerful champions for Alliance War, and again is a champion that shifts how Alliance War defenses are placed. He is being used for Alliance Quest as well, because currently we happen to have 2 Magneto mini-bosses, both of whom Human Torch can dispose of very efficiently. On top of all of that, obviously Human Torch is always one of the cheesier options for plenty of nodes like Clapback and a bunch of others. And then furthermore, obviously, he still puts in plenty of work in every single meaningful piece of story content. I do think there is an alternate reality where the 2019 Outrage and Dev Diaries never came out, where Kabam kept increasing attack values similar to the ones that we see in Grandmaster's Gauntlet, where Human Torch never rose to the prominence. But things that happened definitely helped this champion become much more popular than he was going to originally be, due to the fact that overall we do not face as high attack values. And he has capitalized on that perfectly, and he is pretty much a must-have champion for any self-respecting summoner. Right now, the top 3, and I have already done it. Video is half an hour, and I have talked my way into it. Anyways, top 3. Spot number 3, Nick Fury. I have 5-star, I have 6-star, I want to have another 5 or 6-star, is the way I describe Nick Fury, because he's that useful. He has arguably the most useful wide-reaching synergies with Deadpools and with Quake, by being able to give healing abilities to pretty much any given champion, or at the very least make them a lot more Liquid Courage recoil double edge friendly. He has this safety net synergy that is absolutely fantastic as well, and has saved me so many items over the years. On top of that, Nick Fury himself is an absolute powerhouse as a champion. If you discount all of his synergy value, then the fact that he has access to basically double, or at the bare minimum, depending how you look at it, 130% of an average health pool. Realistically, that infinite healing whilst he is switching out life model decoy is also superbly helpful. On top of that, he is the only champion, and keep in mind, this is again super underrated ability of Nick Fury. He's the only champion in the game that can purify passive effects, and that is vital in a ton of different situations. You can only do that once per quest though, upon destruction of life model decoy, but still, if you know what you're doing, you can capitalize on it the most, and it can be insanely broke ability, and nobody else does it. No one. Which is not something many champions can say. Then on top of that, his bleed damage is just phenomenal, and even in fights where he goes up against bleed immunes, his damage with the Fury active is still significantly better than an average champion. So even against bleed immune champions, he still managed to be an absolute damage powerhouse, and that is often quite important because of his other broken abilities, like staying unblockable an entire fight, like completely ignoring evade and miss effects, like being able to consistently shrug off debuffs every time you knock down an opponent. All of that stuff, plus access to disorient, plus much more, is just broken. Nick Fury represents to me the best that Kabam can do. The champion that's tied to its comic lore very well. The champion that's broken, but in a good sense. It's a champion that doesn't have many apparent weak sides, and even in worst case scenarios, he still manages to be good enough. Nick Fury is one of those champions where I do not think much better could have been done, or should have been done. I think he just dances the edge of being too powerful for the game. Just where he is. Perfect. So good. Love it. And then we need to talk to, I suppose, the biggest success Kabam has had with popular, powerful Marvel character. This game's filled with Sentinels and Odins and Silver Surfers who are either absolutely awful or barely adequate representations of their comic counterparts. This right here is magic. This right here is amazing representation of his comic nature, his comic abilities, his comic power. Everything about the way his ability kit works screams Doctor Doom, and it is so effective. Doctor Doom effectively takes over the fight and puts opponent in his own loop. He has that ability to be the mastermind of the fight, and when you're fighting opponents, you have that smirk on your face, as in you know more than opponents do. Why? Because you know very well, as soon as you get to that level 3, fight's pretty much yours, and you have that confidence. On top of that, you have that insane armor and that insane tankiness. You know that even if something doesn't go quite right, you will more than likely survive anything, the first, the second, and sometimes the third fight. Like, I've seen people take like 50 hits in an Alliance War fight and still win that fight with Dr. Doom. It's so hard to die with him in Alliance War. In general, he's a champion that is not only exciting, loved, but amazing everywhere. He has no real down or weak sides. Stats are great. His damage is plentiful. His utility is amazing. He represents himself well in pretty much every single game mode. And there are no real weaknesses for champion. I think this and Nick Fury is the closest Kabam came intentionally designing something broken. I think Ghost and Quake were absolute accidents. But I think Nick Fury and Dr. Doom were close as they came intentionally designing something borderline broken. And I love it. So, second best champion game, Dr. Doom, plus that beefy prestige. And the best one is no surprise at all, Ghost. It's Ghost. It has to be Ghost. Quake's not available as a 6-star anymore, so it's Ghost. MVP for pretty much every single Legends run made ever. One of the cheese gods somehow by being able to convert every single damage or time effect into massive damage. Unlimited openings, easy intercepts, access to buffs, not rely on debuffs, unblockable specials. Anyways, you name it, she does it, and she does it very well. I'm not gonna say anything more. I'm sad to say this right now because Quake is DQ'd from my lists until she is available 6-star, which I don't think she ever will be. Ghost is at top of the game, and no matter how much Kabam so far has tried to counter her, largely insignificant. Every single new Cosmic Champion that has been released either bypasses miss or inflicts armor break or whatever. Ghost still rules the game. So that is what it is. 36 minutes. So I lied. I didn't keep it short. Couldn't. I just love discussing these champions too much. Anyhow, if you want even more in-depth discussion about the champions mentioned in this video, visit their respective class ranking videos. If your favorite champions did not make a list, please don't hold it up against me. I probably like them too. I just chose differently. It's perfectly okay for me to see the game differently to you. And that does not mean that I'm right and you're wrong. Neither that means that you're right and I'm wrong. It just means that we have different approach, different priorities, different outlooks. Please do not go berserk. Behave civil in comment section discussing your own placements. That is it for now, and I'm gonna catch you guys soon. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information